Hey there, so welcome to our channel. So this is the first video of our channel, so where we'll actually be building a recipe recommendation app. So we'll actually be using Python and we'll be building this app using Streamlit. So let's get into it. So we'll actually be doing our pre-stage in the Jupyter notebook. So first we'll actually initialize our model. So we begin by importing the sentence transformer class from the sentence transformers library. So we are going to be using the sentence transformer in order to initialize our model, because the model that we are going to be using is a sentence transformer model. So after initializing this, we will actually be initializing the model. So the model that we are going to be using is the all MPNet base v2 model. So let me just load the model. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and initialize all of the libraries that is actually needed for our process. So we'll actually be importing Pandas first. So Pandas will actually be used in order to load our dataset, and then we'll be importing tqdm. So tqdm is actually imported for a very cool thing, so I'll show you later. And then we'll be using the Numpy. And then after initializing the tqdm, we also have to call a function called as .pandasof. So yeah, so it's taking some time to load. Okay, so let's actually get into the next major step. So this is actually where we'll be preparing the embeddings. So first we'll load our dataset using the Pandas library. So I have actually created the dataset in a CSV format. So I'll actually be sharing the dataset in the GitHub link. So after loading this dataset, these are all the columns that we have. So we have title, the ingredients, directions, and the formatted. So we do not actually need the ingredients and directions, so we are going to go ahead and drop them. So I'll be using the df.dropOff function in order to drop them. So the columns that we'll be dropping is the ingredients and the directions. And I'll also use in places equal to true, so that we are saving it in the same variable. Okay, so after dropping, this is how our dataset looks like. So now we are going to be creating the embeddings for this formatted column. So let me go ahead and create a function to do this. So we'll actually be creating a function called as embed_data, and it will be taking one argument, that will be the data. So it will be returning the encoded, that is the encoded format of this particular string. So we'll be using model.encodeOff, and then we'll be creating the embeddings column. So we'll actually use the map of function, but over here we'll be using something called as progress_map. So this is only available if we actually do that tqdm.pandasof. So only if this is done, we'll actually be getting that particular function. So the major use case of this function is this particular progress bar over here. So this progress bar is actually very much helpful for us, because we know what is actually happening behind the scenes and how much time it is going to take. Yeah, so it is actually done right now. So let me go ahead and show you how the dataset looks like. So now we have 3 columns and we have created the new embeddings column. So now let me go ahead and save this data. So I'm going to be saving this data in the JSON format, because it makes our dataset much more efficient when we are going to be loading it somewhere else, because we are having the embeddings data. So I'm going to be saving it using the df.to_JSON of function, and I'll be storing each of the lines separately. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create the search function. So we'll actually be creating a function which will search our database and return us the top 5 recipe titles. So for this function, we'll be taking 2 arguments. One will be the query, that is the user query, and then what is the number of titles that we have to return. So over here I'm going to be setting the top k as 5. So I'm going to be taking this embed_data in order to embed our user query, and I'll be storing it in the embedded_query. So now I'm going to be taking the embedded query and the datasets embeddings in order to do a cosine similarity search. So this will be done using the model.similarityOf function. So we'll be using the embedded query and the embeddings data column from the df. So now we just have to convert this into a one-dimensional array, so it is much more better for us to sort it out. So I'm going to be using the np.arrayOf function, and then I'll be flattening the dataset. So now let's actually get the top indices. So we are going to be using np.argsort in order to sort this similarities in the reverse order. So I'm going to be using the reverse indexing over here, and then I'll filter out only the top k elements. So now the top 5 elements will actually be the ones that are much more closer to our embedded query. So after getting that, we are going to be retrieving the titles. So I'll be using df.iloc and I'll be passing the top indices, and after that I'll be filtering out only the title column. So now we have our top 5 title for the given query. So now I'm just going to be returning it. So let's try out this function. So I'll give in chicken pizza. Okay, so we are actually getting the top 5 results over here, but we actually need to return it in a list format, so it is much more better for our application. Yeah, so this is much more better. So now next we are going to be going ahead and create a function in order to return the recipe of the chosen title. So I'll be creating a get_recipe function, and this will actually be taking one argument that will be the title, and we are going to be returning the particular row that is having the title. So I'm going to be using df.query, and I'll use @title in order to get the variable from the argument. So now let's go ahead and use the Skims chicken Alfredo pizza. I'll pass it over here. Yeah, so we are getting the row, but we only need the formatted column. So let me just get the formatted column. Okay, so we need to get only this string over here. So I'm going to be using .iloc of. Okay, so now we are getting the thing. So let's print it out. Okay, so now we have actually done all of our basic setup over here. So now I think we are actually ready for building the application. So let's go into VS Code. So over here I'm just going to be copy pasting all of the import statements and all of the functions from the Jupyter notebook. So because we are going to be reusing all of those functions and the libraries. So we are going to be using the sentence transformer in order to load the model, the pandas in order to load our dataset, and Numpy in order to format the query. We actually need that in order to flatten, and also in order to search sort the particular sort the embeddings to get the top 5 or the top k elements. So we'll read our dataset because we were using the JSON, read_JSON, because we've saved it as a JSON file. So now let's copy and paste all of the functions over here. So we have a top title, so we need the embed_data function. So let me get the embed_data. Okay, so now we need the get_recipes function. Yeah, so now we are ready to build our Streamlit application. So now let's get into the Streamlit code over here. So first we'll actually be using the st.titleOf function. So this is actually in order to set the title of the screen that we are going to be viewing. So we need to import Streamlit. So let me import Streamlit over here. Okay. So first we'll actually give the title of the application that we are going to be building. So this is a recipe recommendation app. So this will actually be the title of our application, and then we'll be getting the user query. So I'll be storing it in a variable called as user_query. So we'll be getting it using the st.text_input. So we'll be asking a question over here. So what recipe are you in the mood for? So based on this, we are going to be searching our vector embeddings. So now only when there is a user query, we are going to be getting the titles using the top titles. So we'll be passing the user query over here, and this will actually return us a list of the top 5 titles that is closer to this. So now we'll be using the st.radio in order to display the options to the user as a list of options. And then when the user selects a particular recipe, we are going to be showcasing that recipe. So I'll be using the subheader function over here in order to showcase what is the selected recipe, and we are going to be showcasing that particular recipe to the user. So this is just for UI. And then we are going to be using st.write. So this is actually similar to the printf function that we use in Python. So we are going to be using the st.writeoff, and we'll be displaying the recipe of the chosen a recipe, chosen recipe. So now let's go ahead and run this. So in order to run this application, we'll be using Streamlit run app.py. So my application name is app.py, so I'm be using that. So now if we go to the link, we can see our application. So yeah, we have our application ready. So let's go ahead and search something. Okay, so yeah, so we have the top 5 recipes over here. We have the Martha Washington candy and all these, and once that is selected, we can see that the recipe is actually listed over here. So when we change our option, the recipe also gets updated according to that. So now it has loaded to the second option that we've chosen. Yeah, so that is it. We have created our first application in our channel. So this is the recipe recommendation app using the Sentence Transformers.